What is up my people, and welcome back, or if you're new, welcome to Technological Journey. Today we're going to be doing a world tour, and there's going to be a world download in the description, as well as a quick recap at the end of the episode of what we've done in these first 10 episodes on this Technological Journey world here. The point of this video here is just so that if you're new, after the 10 episode mark, you don't have to watch the first 10 episodes if you don't want to. You can just watch this to get a quick recap of the series and then join on from episode 11 plus. I'll be doing a video like this every 10 episodes or so, just to catch you up so you don't have to watch the previous episodes. So let's start with the world tour of the base that we've currently got, and let's start from the outside over here. Before we start, just a quick update, we've got 135 hours played on this world so far. We've made some decent progress, but we are by no means anywhere near the end or even the mid game of this pack. So the first thing that we've got outside before we enter the base is we've got our rocket launch pad here. Now this is where we sent a rocket up into space to get to the moon, to get to Phobos, to get to Titan, and where we also launched our space station from, which allowed us to get to some of the other planets. Next to that we've got our farming station, which is where we farm canola and rubber wood. This is all powered down here and stored in some of these storage crates alongside our sugarcane farm here. These storage crates are all hooked up to our applied logistics storage via a storage bus. And now just next to that we have our outside facade of the base. So it's quite small on the outside and you can't really see how far the base extends back into the cliff. But if we look up here you can see we've got an awful lot of space, most of which we are using underground at the moment. So the base is quite large even though it doesn't look it from the outside. So entering the base, this is the first room. Now up here we haven't got any machines or any infrastructure of any sort really. This was the first room that we built and it's mostly just a large open lobby area to give a nice entrance to the base when you enter from the outside. We go down these stairs, and there's also a staircase on the other side. We have our applied logistics terminals, as well as our bed and a couple of different anvils and different blocks related to applied logistics. So inside our applied logistics terminal, this is where we store all of our items. Now you can see the most stored item we have is charcoal, which is what we're producing from our coke ovens, which I'll show you in a second. And alongside that we have a bunch of different dusts, some of which are on passive from cobble works, and some of which we just get through mining using chunk miners. This is just a quick overview of our storage here. We don't really have anything too spectacular at the moment. And the furthest circuit progression that we've got to is to refine circuits, even though we're very close to producing the next circuit, which we'll probably be doing in even the next episode, maybe the one after that. You can see this is also the wood here and the sugarcane from the farm which we talked about earlier. This is our main drive here, where we have, I think it's all 1K storage cells, although we do have a bunch of other drives over in our storage room, which I'll talk about in a second. And this is our fluid monitor, where we can see all of our fluids that are stored. We recently set up Petrochemistry, so we have a lot more fluids than we previously had. These are all also stored over in our storage room, some in fluid storage cells and some in super tanks connected via storage buses. Moving on from our terminals here, if we follow this pathway here, we enter the main section of the base, or the first main room, sorry. Now, there's a long corridor here which goes to our storage room over there, but if we follow underneath this corridor down these stairs, we see our large bronze boiler. Now this is producing the steam into an ender tank which we use to power some of our steam machines over there. And behind that we have our coke ovens. All three of these are running the recipe to produce charcoal and creosote oil from from rubber wood logs which we're farming in our farming station. A bit further along we have our molecular assemblers and some interfaces which helps do most of our auto crafting. And behind that we have our pyrolyse oven, and underneath that a single block distillery. This is to supplement our benzene production, even though it's not our main source of benzene as we're producing that through our petrochemistry over in the other room, which I'll talk about in a bit. On the other side of this room we have most of our single block machines alongside our EBFs and our vacuum freezer. Starting over here we have our steam oven, which is essentially a steam powered multi-block smelter, and it can smelt up to 8 items at once, so it's pretty quick. And next to that we have our steam grinder, which is essentially a macerator that works the same as the steam oven. Both of these have crates on top and are linked up to our applied logistics system with some recipes and auto input and output from the machines themselves. These are just some other crates here with a bunch of different ores which I haven't processed yet, which I've got from mining. Next to that we have our industrial primitive blast furnace. This is where we produce our passive steel by smelting iron using charcoal, and it can smelt, I think it's up to 4 items at once into steel, so this is where we're passively producing our steel. Next to that we have some more single block machines. These are powered by steam turbines, which is using the steam that we produce down there in our large bronze boiler. These are for manually crafting things just by putting things in by hand, or putting things in the top crate, watching them go through and then coming out the bottom crate. There are 2 rows of these, and then there's an Ender IO charger here just to charge up some items. Next to that we have our on-demand single block machines. So on this side here, most of these are LV or MV machines. These 2 are MV, the rest are LV. These are all hooked up to our applied logistics system via interfaces, and some have interfaces on top which are filled with fluids for passive fluid stocking. On the other side, most of these are MV, some of which are HV machines, and they're all the same as the other side, just for different recipes. On the other side of the room we have our 2 EBFs, both of which I believe are running at HV, and they're also hooked up to our applied logistics system for automatic output, although at the moment the inputs are all manual. Next to that we have our vacuum freezer, which is where we cool down our hot ingots, which we produce down in the chemistry room. The main use for this at the moment is for titanium, although we do sometimes use it for cantho. This is hooked up to our applied logistics system underneath with the wiring here. If we go over to the other machines, this is where they're all powered underneath as well. So now we've covered this first room mostly, and we're now ready to move into our storage room. Now on the left of our storage room here, we have all of our storage crates. This is where we store most of our items and most of our bulk items as well. Some of these drawers have void upgrades and some of them have storage upgrades just to store more or void excess items. These are all hooked up to our applied logistics system, so they're all viewable through our terminal over in the first room which I showed you earlier, via a storage bus on the bottom of a storage controller, or on the bottom of a drawer controller, sorry. I've tried to keep all of the wiring tunnels as a 3x3 wherever possible, and it links together all of the base underneath via Fluix cable. On the other side of our storage room, we have our fluid storage. Now these are all super tanks and signs above saying what's stored in what. These ender tanks here are for where we're drilling fluids off-site and importing them into our fluid storage. Now some of these fluids here are passively produced and are passively produced as byproducts, and so we'll want to void some of them when we get excess. This is what this fluid trash can's for here, with a storage bus on the bottom, just so that we only void fluids when necessary. And behind this we have some more drives. Now this top drive here is all fluid drives, partitioned to single fluids, and below that we have some more item drives, most of which are 4K drives. So leaving our storage room, if we follow this pathway back here and we turn left, we have an entrance onto our petrochemistry room. We set this up last episode, and this probably is the room that has our most multi-blocks in the entire base so far. So let's start over here with these distillation towers. So this smaller distillation tower here is fracturing oil for us. And that gives us sulfuric heavy fuel, sulfuric light fuel, sulfuric naphtha, and sulfuric gas. The sulfuric gas is just put over into fluid storage, and then the rest of them are put back into this system to do some further processing. This distillation tower here, the one behind it, and the one to the side and behind it, are all for distilling the naphtha, the light fuel, and the heavy fuel, the steam cracked variants. But going back to this oil one, when we get the sulfuric fuels out, they get automatically put over into these reactors and electrolyzers here via our applied logistics system. These chemical reactors hydrocrack, or probably not crack, but combine with hydrogen these 3 fuel variants to remove the sulfuric tag at the start of each name. These electrolyzers are just for reproducing some chemicals to put back into the system where possible. Once this has happened, all of the chemicals get exported up and over here into these steam crackers. This is where we crack the naphtha, the sulfuric light fuel. This is where we crack the naphtha, the light fuel, and the heavy fuel into the steam cracked variant, using steam which is produced from this large bronze boiler here. Once the 3 chemicals have been steam cracked, they get put over into these distillation towers where they're distilled into all of their byproducts. And down here, we have where we're producing our nitrobenzene. Now this is going to be the next fuel that we use, even though we haven't integrated it into the base yet. The reason that this is in this room here is because it uses a bunch of fluids from this petrochemistry distillation here. So we have this distillery producing distilled water, this mixer producing nitration mixture, this chemical reactor producing sulfur trioxide, this chemical reactor producing sulfuric acid, this chemical reactor producing ammonia, this chemical reactor producing nitric acid, and this chemical reactor finally producing nitrobenzene. This is all hooked up to our applied logistics system, and the outputs are input into the main applied logistics network, where this green cable here just transports the fluids between all of the different reactors in the chemical line via a subnet. So that's our petrochemistry room, which was made last episode. And if we go back up these stairs, but not up this one into the main section of the base, but down here into our chemistry room. This is the final room of the base, and this is where we produce most of our different chemicals and items via chemical lines. So starting down here, we have, I think this is our gold line, where we turn precious metal into gold ingots. This next chemical line here makes us sodium sulfate, which we use for making different types of circuit boards, used for different circuits. And on the end here, I think we have our polyethylene setup, where we're producing polyethylene. Going round to the other side, we have this here, where we're producing our plastic circuit boards on passive. This next one here is just a couple of stray machines producing us, I think, lubricant and tin alloy, or maybe soldering alloy. This here is where we're turning our polyethylene into sheets, and then we also have a couple of other things here. I think this one's centrifuging rubber wood into its byproducts. If we turn around, here we have our biodiesel setup. Now this is what we're running the base off at the moment in terms of fuel, because we haven't converted over to our nitrobenzene up from the petrochemistry room yet. So this is where we make biodiesel. Next to this, we have our EBF with Canthal coils and a little setup here. Now this produces us hot titanium ingots, which are moved up to the vacuum freezer upstairs and cooled down into normal titanium. Now if we take a trip over to the other side of the room, here we have a little setup here producing us hydrogen, oxygen and chlorine and nitrogen. These are all sent up into fluid storage. Next to this we have our powered spawners, which is where we just create sol vials for zombies, endermen, skeletons and blazes, and then put them down into a vial processor to get the mob drops. And next to this we have our epoxy setup, which we use for making epoxy resin boards. These are used for different types of circuits. Now on the back of this we have another little setup here. This produces us polyphenylene sulfide, which we use to coat HV cables, or I think it's EV cables, aluminium cables. And down over here we have a little electrolyzer setup making us sodium hydroxide dust. If we turn around we have our cobble works. Now this is a series of machines here which produce us cobblestone and the associated byproducts. So we have cobblestone, gravel, sand, clay, and then we electrolyze some clay or stone dust into aluminium, silicon, lithium and sodium dust. On the back of our cobble works we have a single chemical reactor down here, producing on passive another chemical or item which we use throughout the base. Now this room here isn't very finished because we plan on expanding this massively, and that will happen very soon in the next few episodes as we unlock the large chemical reactor, which is a multi-block version of the chemical reactor which we're using down here quite frequently. So that's a little world tour of what we've got so far. Nothing too special yet, but there's some good infrastructure for where we're at the moment. And now, just in terms of what we've done throughout the different episodes. So this was where we started back in episode 1. We used to have a little setup here, and then as soon as we could we moved into the mining dimension. Now this is what's left of our world in the mining dimension. Most of it's been moved over to our main base over in the overworld, but we have a little string farm here and rubber wood farm here, as well as some of these workbenches and some crates and some old steam machines. Most of this was where we resided during episode 2 to 3, and we got up our basic automation and materials needed to create more infrastructure and move into the base. In I think it was episode 3 to 4, we built this first room on the base here, we moved our applied logistics system in, and we built this room here. In episode 5 we built the storage room and connected it all up to our applied logistics system, as well as I think we also started to get our automated setup going here. The next thing that we did was we built the EBFs and we passive steel production, as well as we built the chemistry room downstairs, and we also linked that up to our vacuum freezer up here to make titanium. The next thing we did was we started producing benzene with this pyrolyze oven to help supplement our new epoxy setup, which we made shortly after. And then finally in episode 10, which was the last episode, we built this petrochemistry room here for distilling our oil into different oil variants. And a prerequisite to that was we travelled to space to mine oil and chlorine on Phobos and Titan. We also set this up as soon as we moved into the overworld from the mining dimension, so it was quite early on, this farm here. So that's a quick recap and a quick world tour of what we've got so far. I'll be doing another one of these around episode 20 for you guys. So if you are new and this is the first episode you're watching, then I do encourage you to watch the first 10 episodes as well, because I think you can learn some cool things about how we progress through this world by watching those. But if you don't feel like it, that's you all caught up, and there's also a world save in the description if you want to download it and have a look around for yourself. As always, I appreciate if you leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and if you're enjoying the series, or you think you're going to enjoy the series if you're new, please do subscribe, it means a lot. Also, please do leave a comment how you think I'm getting on, and if you're enjoying the series so far, or if you plan on watching the series in the future. Thank you very much. It's been me,